What happens when two of the biggest action stars with very different philosophies go head to head in the ultimate rivalry? Steven Seagal versus Jean-Claude Van Damme, two martial arts legends with careers shaped by fame, controversy, and larger-than-life personas. But when fans look back, there's one clear winner, and it's not the one that you might expect.
But guys like Steven Seagal, you could beat his with your hand tied behind your back, right? I mean, he's a big fat guy, right?
He's a nice guy.
Despite both men having their fair share of scandals and personal challenges, Van Damme continues to stand tall in the court of public opinion, while Steven Seagal's reputation is faltered. Why is that? What does this rivalry tell us about the way that we judge our heroes? In today's video, we'll uncover the untold story behind this iconic feud and answer the burning question: why does Jean-Claude Van Damme still hold the crown, despite all the odds?
Anybody seen Richie? Huh?
In the 90s, action cinema was dominated by titans like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. But while these two icons had a friendly rivalry, the feud between Van Damme and Seagal was something else entirely. It was intense, personal, and at times, downright explosive. This wasn't just about who could pull off the best action sequences. This was about pride, ego, and the very real question of who was the tougher martial artist.
Who's tougher, you or he?
I run faster.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
Let's dive into how it all began and why this rivalry still fascinates fans decades later. Our story starts long before Hollywood ever came calling. Van Damme and Seagal couldn't have had more different backgrounds.
My first guest once described himself as the Fred Astaire of karate. I'm not sure I know what that means. We'll find out.
Millions of people have gotten a kick out of my next guest in such films as Bloodsport, Cyborg, Kickboxer.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the muscles from Brussels.
Jean-Claude Van Damme!
Jean-Claude Camille Francois von Werenberg, better known as Jean-Claude Van Damme, was born in Brussels, Belgium in 1960.
When you were a kid,
Right.
you were not always the Jean-Claude Van Damme we know today.
Okay, the biggest fight was against myself. It's hard to believe. When I was a kid, I was very small, very skinny, like a nerd, you know?
As a boy, he was described as frail, lacking in self-confidence, but his father, recognizing his son's need to build physical and mental strength, enrolled him in Shotokan karate at the age of 10. This would be the first step in a journey that transformed him into the muscles from Brussels. Van Damme didn't just stop at karate. By his late teens, he had also taken up kickboxing, a move that would lay the foundation for success in both martial arts and in cinema. He competed across Europe, racking up wins and a reputation as a fighter to watch. By 1979, he had won the European Karate Championship as part of the Belgian karate team. He even dabbled in bodybuilding, winning the Mr. Belgium title in 1978. Van Damme's early years were all about proving himself, proving that he could be more than the frail child he once was. But Van Damme's ambitions didn't end with martial arts. They stretched all the way across the Atlantic to Hollywood. Van Damme moved to the United States in the early 80s, and like many aspiring actors, he struggled. He worked odd jobs, including delivering pizzas while hustling for small acting gigs.
You had a struggle when you went out to L.A. and what was it, 1980, 81, around there?
81, 82, I drove taxi, I did the limousine, I was upgraded.
How did you actually get started? Because you put flyers on windshields, didn't you?
I talked to everybody, producer, director. And one day when I came in the restaurant, a guy came out, he was a big producer, with a few Chinese guy. His name was Menachem Golan. And I told him, Menachem, Jean-Claude Van Damme, remember? And he go, no, my friend, like a guy from Israel. So I did like a demonstration on the street, and I kicked him above his head, and he gave me a card. And the next day I was in his office, and I came for a small part.
His big break came in 1986 when he played the villain in No Retreat, No Surrender. But the real turning point came 2 years later with Bloodsport. Van Damme had fought tooth and nail to get Bloodsport released. He even helped re-edit the film. And when it finally hit theaters, it became an instant cult classic. The underdog story, much like Van Damme's own life, resonated with audiences. His explosive kicks and the now iconic split solidified him as Hollywood's next martial arts sensation. And on the other side of the world, Steven Seagal was also making his mark, though his path couldn't have been more different.
My first guest has elbowed his way to the front ranks of Hollywood's top action stars.
There's 1 part thespian, 1 part ninja, and 3 parts deadly jungle cat.
As the star of such films as Above the Law, Hard to Kill, and Marked for Death.
He's a 7th down black belt in the Japanese art of Aikido.
Ladies and gentlemen, please say hello to the one, the only, Steven Seagal.
Born in 1952 in Lansing, Michigan, Steven Frederick Seagal had a fascination with martial arts from an early age. But it wasn't until his family moved to Fullerton, California that his journey truly began. Around the age of 13, Seagal started studying karate under Fumio Demura, a renowned martial arts master, but karate wasn't where Seagal would make his name.
That was probably, again, 17, 18.
17,
See, after that, I left for Asia, and then...
Did you go to Asia that young?
Yeah.
See, I always thought you went to Asia when you were like your mid-20s or something.
No.
Oh, okay.
In the early 1970s, Seagal moved to Japan, a rare feat for a Westerner at that time, to study Aikido, a martial art that emphasizes using an opponent's energy against them. Seagal's time in Japan was transformative. He fully immersed himself in the culture, and under the tutelage of masters like Koichi Tohei, he earned his black belt.
Started out studying martial arts, acupuncture, herbology, bone manipulation, things like that, and then from there I went into some writing and security operations and things like that, and then I started teaching the martial arts.
Yeah. This is Steve Seagal, the only non-Japanese Aikido master ever in the history of Japan to own and operate an Aikido school on Japanese soil.
By the time he returned to the U.S., Seagal had become known as the first foreigner to run an Aikido dojo in Japan. Now, Steven's ex-wife running that dojo in Osaka might say something different, but hey, we won't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Well, anyway, back to our story. While Van Damme was battling his way up through small-budget films, Seagal's entry into Hollywood was, well, it was a lot smoother. His connection with Hollywood elites, including super agent Michael Ovitz, helped land him his debut role in Above the Law in 1988.
There's so many stories that float around as to how you got involved in Hollywood. One is that Mike Ovitz was a former student of yours and he took you to Warner Brothers. You did an Aikido demonstration and Warner Brothers was blown away and boom, Steven Seagal became a movie star. Is that true? And if not, how did it happen?
I hate to admit it, that is true.
Okay.
Seagal's stoic on-screen presence and unique fighting style rooted in the fluid defensive movements of Aikido quickly made him a standout in the crowded action genre. He wasn't just another muscle-bound action star. He was the calm, almost mystical martial artist who could throw bad guys around with barely a flick of the wrist. In the late 80s and early 90s, both men seemed poised to become the next big thing in action cinema. Van Damme's hits like Universal Soldier, Kickboxer, and Time Cop were putting him at the top of the box office, while Seagal's Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and especially Under Siege were doing the same thing for him. They were both on fire until the rivalry really started to heat up. Now, to understand the rivalry, you first need to understand how different their martial arts styles were, both on screen and off.
I think Steven Seagal and myself, we're both different, and we are, I believe, the new action star, and he's a wonderful guy.
Jean-Claude Van Damme brought a high-octane, visually thrilling approach to fight choreography. With his kickboxing background combined with his flexibility and athleticism created a dynamic style that audiences loved. His moves were designed for the camera, high-flying kicks, spinning heel strikes, and of course, the famous splits. Van Damme's fight scenes felt like carefully choreographed dance routines, with each strike perfectly timed for maximum visual impact.
Steven Seagal, does he do what you do essentially? Is he a martial arts?
Yeah, different type of martial arts, Aikido.
Steven Seagal's style, on the other hand, was the polar opposite. Aikido was all about redirecting opponents' energy, using their momentum against them. Seagal's fight scenes were brutally efficient, no unnecessary movement, no flash. His characters would break bones and toss opponents with minimal effort, relying on joint locks, wrist twists, and throws. While some critics found Seagal's fights less exciting than Van Damme's, others appreciated the grounded, no-nonsense, gritty approach. The contrasts in their fighting styles mirrored their personalities, both on and off screen. Van Damme was energetic, charismatic, and always ready to perform for his fans. Seagal, by contrast, was reserved, even aloof, often criticized for taking himself too seriously.
Do you know people at the CIA?
I might have met a couple of folks once or twice.
Have you ever lived a dangerous life that might be like the lives they live when you're in the CIA?
I did a couple of things, you know, once or twice.
The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Did you or did you not work with the CIA? Did I make that up, or are people just saying that to be funny, or did you actually have a job with the Central Intelligence Agency?
I like the way you say that. Well, you know, it's kind of a personal thing, Dave.
And it's this difference in attitude that really sparked the flames of their rivalry. On screen, both Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal played invincible action heroes, men who could take on entire armies without breaking a sweat. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling? How do their off-screen lives compare to the unstoppable forces that they portray on screen? Van Damme's journey to stardom was rooted in respect for the martial arts community. Early in his career, Van Damme worked as a sparring partner for none other than Chuck Norris. It's an interesting detail that shows Van Damme's humility and willingness to learn from established martial artists. He wasn't afraid to pay his dues and work his way up the ranks. His relationships with other martial artists were built on mutual respect, and that carried over into his public image as someone who respected the martial arts tradition. Seagal, on the other hand, took a very different approach. In one of his first major interviews, rather than aligning himself with the martial arts community, Seagal came out swinging, criticizing Chuck Norris and even issuing an open challenge to his friends and colleagues. Seagal wasn't shy about making enemies early on, and that bold confrontational attitude, it became a defining feature of his off-screen persona.
Do you still fight?
Yes, I do.
You still dangerous?
In that same interview in the LA Times, Seagal also took aim at his rival at the time, Frank Dukes. The very same Frank Dukes who had inspired Bloodsport, Van Damme's breakout role. Steven Seagal said anyone claiming to teach ninjutsu in America is a fraud. But hey man, here's the thing about ninjutsu. It's one of those things that only real ninjas know.
That will make you Frank Dukes.
No. It's Dukes.
Gotcha.
It was a bold move and one that further solidified Seagal's reputation as a lone wolf in the martial arts world.
How good is Seagal? Truthfully, I don't know. I don't know Steven. I've only met him once. Jean-Claude's pretty good.
You can't tell just from seeing his movie, martial art.
See, most of Seagal's movies, his action is done close up. You really can't see. Everything is real quick cuts, so you don't get a chance to really see exactly what he's doing. Where with Van Damme, trained with me for 1.5 years when he came over from Brussels, so I know him quite well.
Yeah.
Steven Seagal's early attacks on both Chuck Norris and Frank Dukes set him apart as someone who wasn't interested in forming alliances, but instead saw himself as above the rest. The contrast between these two men, one who started his career sparring with legends and the other who publicly challenged them, highlights the fundamental differences in how Van Damme and Seagal approached their rise to fame. Van Damme's relationships within the martial arts community and his respect for its traditions helped him maintain a more good guy image, even through personal struggles. Seagal's combative approach, on the other hand, helped cultivate a more divisive reputation, one that would follow him for years to come. For Van Damme, his personal life has been a roller coaster. Despite becoming an international star, he faced significant challenges behind the scenes. Marital issues, struggles with substance abuse, and a very public fight with addiction in the 90s. In many ways, his real life mirrored the comebacks of his on-screen characters, and yet, Van Damme has largely managed to maintain a good guy image in the public eye. His openness about his struggles, particularly in later years, and his willingness to poke fun at himself in films like JCVD, helped fans see him as a relatable figure, someone who fought his own demons and came out stronger. Van Damme's vulnerability and growth made him someone fans could root for, not just on screen, but in real life. Despite his flaws, there was always a sense that Van Damme was trying to better himself. His reputation as a flawed but ultimately likable figure has only grown with time, turning him into an action star who people not only respect, but genuinely care for. Steven Seagal's off-screen persona, however, is far more contentious. While his early career was marked by mystery and intrigue, this stoic, almost mystical martial artist, his public reputation took a hit over the years. Allegations of misconduct, clashes with fellow martial artists, and accusations of false claims about his martial arts prowess have left Seagal's public image tarnished. Unlike Van Damme, who embraced his faults, Seagal's attempts to maintain an air of invincibility off-screen often worked against him. His refusal to acknowledge his controversies has left him more isolated in the public eye, and his reputation has suffered as a result. The media and the fans played significant roles in shaping these narratives. Van Damme, with his self-deprecating humor and transparency, allowed the public to see his humanity. Seagal, on the other hand, continued to present himself as untouchable, and when cracks in that persona appeared, they only fueled the perception that Seagal was hiding something. The contrast between these two men shows how much the public values humility and self-awareness in his heroes, and how quickly a hero can fall when they refuse to let down the mask. And let's be honest, both Van Damme and Seagal have been involved in some pretty bizarre incidents over the years. The larger-than-life personas they cultivated on screen sometimes spilled over into real life in the strangest ways.
Chuck, man, you are the man.
Oh, man.
You're the man.
Man.
Jesus, you slap Jean-Claude Van Damme. Let's go through the whole story. What were you doing in Scores that night?
Take, for example, the little-known story of Van Damme's feud with actor and bodyguard Chuck Zito. According to reports, the two got into a heated argument at Scores, a gentleman's club in New York back in 1998. Zito, a former boxer and Hell's Angels member, allegedly knocked Van Damme out cold with a single punch. It's one of those wild stories that's so outrageous you'd think it was scripted, but nope, a fight really happened, although it wasn't the version of the story where Van Damme was knocked out cold with a single punch. Zito shared the story on the Howard Stern show.
And I hit him a right hand, a left hook, and he went down. And
so you didn't slap him?
Nah, you see, this is what I'm here to clear today.
Good,
I've heard so many stories and so many versions of it.
And Van Damme actually acknowledged that he took an L that night.
Did he crap his pants?
Well, I don't know. I didn't check.
Did you smell anything?
No. It goes good old. He beelines. He beelines to the bathroom. He comes out. It smells like shit everywhere. The guy choked the shit out of Steven Seagal.
My house is full of shit. He shit everywhere. Look what he did. He shit all over the wall.
But then, on the other side of the coin, there's the urban legend involving Seagal and the late grappling master, judo Gene LeBell. Everyone's heard that story, but the story goes that during the filming of Out for Justice, Seagal made the bold claim that no one could choke him out.
Anybody know why Richie did Bobby Lupo?
LeBell, a legendary stuntman and martial artist, decided to test that theory. Now, as the story goes, LeBell put Seagal in a chokehold, and not only did Steven Seagal pass out, but he also, well, how can we put this delicately? Let's say he soiled himself.
Steven Seagal, all those karate movies, remember them things? He shit in his pants, I think, twice.
Can I laugh in your face?
Now, most versions of this story are extremely exaggerated, and some people say that it never even happened. And I mean, I have at least 2 videos on this channel about what actually happened based on what Stephen Lambert may have witnessed, but it's a tale that has followed Steven Seagal for years, becoming a piece of martial arts folklore. Steven Seagal, of course, has denied that the incident ever took place.
He wanted to stretch my back, and he stretched my back, and then I just kind of, flipped over the top of him and said thank you for that.
But like most tall tales, it continues to live on, adding to the mystique and absurdity of his public persona. Both Van Damme and Seagal, for better or worse, became entangled in these wild, sometimes ridiculous stories that only enhanced their larger-than-life personas. Their feuds, their clashes, and their public scandals became the stuff of Hollywood legend, leaving fans with plenty to talk about and plenty to laugh about, too.
If you got in a fight with, like, Jackie Chan, Steven Seagal, and you, who do you think would win?
Well, the seeds of their rivalry were planted on the talk show circuit, most notably during separate interviews on the Arsenio Hall show.
Who would win if you and Steven Seagal had a fight?
Below or above the belt?
Oh, now explain that now.
It's very easy.
I don't know. Above the belt.
Above the belt?
Yes.
Of course, me.
Now, if I had to say below the belt, what would you have answered?
Of course, me. He's a wonderful guy.
In the early 90s, Seagal made waves when he dismissed Van Damme's credentials. When asked about his contemporaries in the martial arts world, Seagal brushed off Van Damme's competitive record, implying that, well, it was a matter of opinion whether Van Damme had ever truly been a champion.
I think that that's a matter of opinion, that he was a champion anywhere. You know. And I mean, you know, I'm not being catty or anything. I wish the guy all the best. But there are an awful lot of people who say that that's not true.
For his part, Van Damme took the high road, mostly. But in interviews, he remained humble, occasionally offering a cheeky remark, but he never fully engaged in Seagal's war of words.
You could beat his though, right? He's not a real karate man, is he? He can't lift his leg. Could he lift his leg over his, like, could he even get... He couldn't even hit you in the nuts with his leg, could he?
He can hardly lift his leg to walk.
Right, Jean-Claude?
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's a nice guy.
That said, rumors began circulating that the two were privately fuming at one another. Van Damme, ever the competitor, reportedly wanted to confront Seagal and settle their differences, not just with words, but with fists too. But things didn't stop there. In a 2023 interview with The Telegraph, Van Damme revealed that in the early 90s, Sony Pictures co-president and CEO Peter Guber made both actors an incredible offer, $20 million each to fight one another in a Las Vegas sporting event. The idea was simple. Two action stars with a very real rivalry fighting in front of millions of fans live. But while Van Damme was ready to go, Steven Seagal refused. And according to Van Damme, this was the third time Seagal had refused to fight him, an awkward situation for someone who had publicly initiated their hostilities. Seagal's refusal only fueled rumors that his tough guy persona on screen didn't quite match up to his actions in real life. But behind the scenes, tensions were mounting. According to Sylvester Stallone, the rivalry nearly came to blows at a party in the late 90s. Van Damme, tired of Seagal's tough talk, confronted him and challenged him to a fight. He waited 2 hours outside for him, but Seagal, well, he reportedly left the party, refusing to engage. Well, later that night, the confrontation nearly spilled over again when Van Damme followed Seagal to a nightclub in Miami, reportedly still eager to settle the score. But once again, no punches were thrown because Steven Seagal ran. Instead, the incident only fueled rumors and solidified their rivalry in the public's imagination.
Is that true he got in a fight with you?
No. It'd be like me squashing an ant.
I don't remember. I don't know if it was the Inquirer, but I remember reading something about that.
Come on.
You, Larry?
Thought he said he did like a spinning double twist kick
double
or some
kick.
shit. It's like on the front of it.
If he sees me, he runs.
Well, he said that he whooped some Aikido ass or something. I don't know.
Come on.
It wasn't just about who had the better moves on screen anymore. Now it was personal. Well, let's fast forward to the present, and the rivalry, it's still a hot topic among fans.
Do I think Jean-Claude's a tough guy in martial arts? No.
Recently, I conducted a poll asking you guys to weigh in. In their prime, who would win in a real fight and who had the better film career? The results? Over 5,000 votes came in, and an overwhelming 90% of you guys chose Van Damme. Let's take a look at some of your comments. Jean actually wanted to challenge Steve back in the 90s. Unfortunately, Steve didn't want to fight him. Seagal is weak as piss. Van Damme has a legitimate kickboxing record. That says more than enough about who would win. Steven would obliterate Van Damme in a national eating contest. Jean could crush a walnut with his butt. Game over. The comments really speak for themselves, don't they? There's a clear preference for Van Damme, not just in terms of who would win in a fight, but who had the better overall career. Many fans point to Van Damme's actual competitive kickboxing record as evidence of his legitimacy, while Seagal's reputation has taken a hit over the years, especially with fans who question his real-life fighting experience. But not everyone was ready to count Seagal out. One commenter pointed out that Seagal's size and Aikido training could give him the upper hand in a real street fight, where joint locks and throws might come into play. But the majority of fans seem to believe that Van Damme's speed, agility, and powerful strikes would ultimately carry the day. But at the heart of the Steven Seagal versus Jean-Claude Van Damme rivalry is something deeper than just martial arts or movie stardom. It's about the myth of the action hero, what they represent to audiences, and why we're so captivated by them. In the 80s and 90s, action heroes became more than just movie characters. They became symbols. These men weren't just fighting bad guys on screen, they were fighting for something bigger. They represented strength, independence, and an unwavering sense of justice. In a world filled with uncertainty, these heroes were the constant, the guys who would get the job done no matter what. Van Damme and Seagal, like Stallone and Schwarzenegger before them, tapped into that myth. But while Van Damme embodied the idea of hard work and redemption, the flawed hero who makes mistakes but ultimately redeems himself, Seagal represented something different. The invincible man, the stoic warrior who couldn't be touched. Both appealed to different aspects of what people wanted in their action stars. Van Damme's appeal lies in his ability to show vulnerability. He's a man who has fallen and gotten back up, both on and off screen. His openness about his struggles with addiction, his personal flaws, and his humanity make him relatable. Fans forgive him because they see themselves in him, imperfect but always striving to be better. Seagal, by contrast, has cultivated an aura of untouchability. His characters, and by extension his off-screen persona, are built around the idea that nothing can hurt him. And while that can be appealing in a fictional action hero, it's a lot harder to relate to in real life. When cracks appeared in Seagal's armor, it was harder for fans to empathize with someone who seemed unwilling to show his vulnerability. At its core, this rivalry isn't just about two men. It's about the myth of the action hero. Why do we need these larger-than-life figures? Why do we forgive some and not others? Action heroes like Van Damme and Seagal represent our ideas of masculinity, strength, and justice. But as our culture has evolved, so too have our expectations of those heroes. We want them to be strong, yes, but we also want them to be human. And perhaps that's why, in the long run, Van Damme has managed to hold on to his crown, because he's shown us his humanity. He's the hero who falls, but always gets back up. So where are they now? Let's talk about how these two legends have fared in the years since their rivalry first made headlines. Jean-Claude Van Damme has shown surprising growth as an actor. In 2008, he starred in JCVD, a film where he played a fictionalized version of himself. The movie was a critical success, with Van Damme delivering a heartfelt, self-aware performance that earned him respect from both fans and critics alike. He's also starred in smaller but well-received films like The Bouncer, and even had a notable villainous role in The Expendables 2. And then there's his viral Volvo commercial where Van Damme performs his famous splits between two moving trucks. He's also done quite a few cool Netflix movies. And it's moments like this that have kept Van Damme relevant, not just as a martial artist, but as a pop culture icon. Now, Steven Seagal, on the other hand, he's taken a different path. His career has shifted largely to direct-to-video films, where his performances haven't evolved much since his 90s heyday. He continues to work steadily, but his films haven't made the same impact as they once did. Well, unless you're a stuntman working on them.
In those films he did with Steven Seagal, he was actually hitting the stuntmen like for real?
Hell yeah. He's known for that.
He's known for that.
Hell yeah.
So how would the stuntmen react after getting punched by Steven Seagal?
Ouch.
Personal controversies, including allegations of misconduct and his close ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin, have further complicated Seagal's public image. In the end, the rivalry between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal wasn't just about who could throw the better punch or who had the more effective martial arts. It was a clash of personalities, fighting styles, and public perception. While Seagal may have been the bigger, more imposing figure, Van Damme's dynamic fighting style combined with his willingness to embrace his flaws and grow as an actor has made him the fan favorite. So what do you think? Would Seagal's Aikido have been too much for Van Damme's kicks, or would Van Damme's competitive spirit have won out in the end? Let us know in the comments below, and I'll be checking in to see what you have to say. And if you're interested in hearing more about Steven Seagal's other feuds with martial artists, Hey, be sure to check out our video, Steven Seagal versus Frank Dukes, when Bushido masters collide. And 3 times Steven Seagal ran from a fight. I promise you won't want to miss any of those stories. And as always, hey, y'all keep training, remember to breathe, and come back and holler at me in the next video.